My name is Douglas Altamiro Consolo. I'm a teacher and a researcher at UNESP, the São Paulo State University in Brazil. My presentation is about computer-assisted assessment in teletendon oral interactions. And one of my goals in this study was to verify whether there are characteristics in computer-assisted assessment that can support a new paradigm in language assessment. Two important theoretical statements that support my presentation are: 1. Assessment constitutes an essential dimension of learning experiences, and it is an important aspect in teletendon interactions inasmuch as it can help interactants and teachers in cases of institutional and integrated teletendon partnerships to verify indications of language development and the achievement or not of learning goals. 2. Computer-aided assessment is defined as any type of activity in which computers are used to support a process of assessment apart from and beyond their simple function to store and transmit information. Computer-aided assessment helps faster assessment, increases the quality and quantity of information detected, and maximizes the provision of feedback about language assessment processes. Now let's have a look at 3 examples of data in teletendon interactions from a study done by Rossi dos Santos that illustrate the most common type of assessment in the interactions analyzed here, that is, linguistic feedback. The interactions were performed by 2 students engaged in teletendon, a Brazilian university student and a North American university student. Example 1 illustrates feedback provided by the North American interactant on an item of vocabulary that was unknown by the Brazilian interactant. Have you tried water ski? No. No? What? Water ski. Water ski? Yeah, do you know what it is? No? Like skiing, right? Ski, yeah. You can ski on the snow, you can ski on the water as well. Ah, okay. So the word water skiing was presented by the North American interactant in the context of their conversation. In the second example, a case of a communicative function in English, how to speak about age, which differs from the way the same function is expressed in Portuguese, is corrected by the North American interactant. You did good. One thing was when you were talking about ages, you said my mom has 40. Yeah? It's she is, and then however many years old. Ah, yes. So okay. So like I'm 21 years old. Yeah, I'm nervous. Okay, don't be nervous. You speak very well. And next, we have another example on feedback about vocabulary. And then, the only other thing that you said wrong the entire time was you said my grandfather's. Ah, okay. And you should have said my grandparents, I think. And can you believe it? No? Yeah? Only 2 errors. So, based on the theoretical framework revised for this study and on the data analyzed, we can say that when one of the interactants lacks language to express an idea, it is common that his or her partner provides help with vocabulary or grammatical structures, as illustrated in examples 1, 2, and 3 above. Interactants sometimes comment on their partner's good linguistic abilities, as illustrated in examples 2 and 3 as well. These types of linguistic feedback can be seen as peer assessment in teletendon interactions and they very much resemble the types of feedback teachers usually provide in standard language lessons. Moving now to my final comments. No clear distinctions were found to exist between computer-aided assessment and more traditional procedures for language assessment. Principles for computer-aided assessment seem to combine traditional bases for language assessment and testing with a number of pedagogical principles that underpin distance learning. Nevertheless, computer-aided language learning and computer-aided assessment can contribute in various aspects of language education, especially when large numbers of learners are involved in teaching and learning processes. However, these principles do not characterize a new paradigm in language assessment in the teletandem interactions analyzed in this study, since the linguistic criteria on which teletandem interactants base their evaluation are very similar to criteria that underpin language assessment and testing by means of paper and pencil tests, for example. I conclude this presentation by saying that we need further investigations and reflections for the establishment of principles of language assessment in electronic contexts. And here are the 3 references mentioned in this presentation. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Suzy, and this is Ana Carolina. We are going to present a paper called Teletandem and Multimodality, the impact of different modes in peer corrective feedback. The context we are going to focus on is the institutionally integrated teletandem, which means that teletandem practice is incorporated into the foreign language program. This, according to Guichon and Cohen 2016, this kind of configuration or this kind of context is naturally multimodal because it involves the combination of oral, textual, and visual modes during teletandem communication. So in this presentation, we would like to discover or to discuss how does a combination of oral, textual, and visual modes of communication impact corrective feedback provision in teletandem oral sessions? Multimodality is conceived in this presentation as the use of several semiotic modes in the design of a semiotic product or event, together with the particular way in which these modes are combined. This means that teletandem participants can combine the different modes in different ways. So that's important to understand the several different events during the interaction between the peers. In our case, we are going to focus on peer corrective feedback. That is the response to learner utterances given by the teletandem partner when the utterance has an error or when the partner considers the utterance has an error. Some studies in this area have shown that the relationship established by participants in virtual exchanges seem to have an impact on the interaction and on corrective feedback provision. Usually this impact is related to saving face issues. Some studies also show that recast is the most frequent corrective feedback type in telecollaborative learning settings. In the next slide, we are going to see a table that explains corrective feedback types according to Lister et al. 2013. In telecollaboration, most studies revealed that either recasts or explicit correction in a lesser degree are the only corrective feedback types found. So as we can see, they are types of reformulation, right? Because all these darker red are considered reformulations. And based on these studies, we are also going to investigate how multimodality may have an impact on how corrective feedback is provided in teletandem. We used the same data set that Fresky 2017 used. That means 20 recorded teletandem oral sessions between 3 Brazilians and their American partners. We investigate only the part in which the participants spoke Portuguese. So in total, there are 8 hours, 49 minutes and 37 seconds of conversation in Portuguese, multimodal teletandem corpus. And Fresky did not analyze this data in relation to multimodality. And so this is our focus here.
Okay, so for our data analysis, we based on Debras et al. 2015, and we analyzed then the verbal content, that means what is said by the participants, the vocal features, how it is said by falling or rising tone, hyperarticulation, syllabication, tone imitation, or laughs, gestures, hand gestures, head nods and head shakes, facial expressions like smiles or mimicry, and the chat use that sometimes is mentioned by the transcriber by the noise of the keystrokes. We actually do not have what they said, I mean what they wrote, but we can hear the keystrokes during the session. As a result, we know that reformulation, recast, and explicit correction was the only type of feedback used by the Brazilian partners. And there are different modes involved in those corrective feedback. Gestures were used in 55 occurrences, vocal features 22, and the chat only 6. All of which seem to play a complementary role in corrective feedback provision. And the combination of those different modes made the distinction between recast and explicit feedback unclear, as we will see during our analysis. So in this first extract, we have the original occurrence in Portuguese and the translated version in English. As we can see in the bolded part, we know that the American says very much thank you, and in Portuguese it's the opposite. We say thank you very much. And here the Brazilian, while she says that, she moves her head from one way to another in an attempt to show the correct order of the word, the expression, thank you very much. This does not seem to threaten her face, her partner's face, but it shows how the order was supposed to be. So we do not have like an explicit way, a linguistic way, but the movement is telling her that there is a problem and that she should say this in a different way. And in the next line, we can see that she corrects herself. In the next example, there is the use of the chat, and of course it is an explicit correction because we have this that means, oh, there is a problem here, and the Brazilian types the word, probably the word Christian, because we can hear her typing the word, and the American looks somewhere on the screen. We can see that when we watch the video, and then she corrects herself. Instead of using the word cristiano, which is Spanish, she says the word cristã, that in Portuguese means Christian. So in this way, although it is an explicit correction, and the use of chat seems to help the American to see the problem of the word that she was saying. And for our final considerations, we can see the relevance of affective and social aspects and context-specific traits of peer-corrected feedback. Why? In this case, multimodality seems to make error correction more evident without being face-threatening for learners. They do not have to interrupt their speech in order to correct. Actually, the multimodality helps them to focus, but without face threatening their learners. And reformulation in its varied forms may be corrective feedback category that is typical in those type of interactions, which is symmetrical and collaborative, and in which this kind of relationship is established. We thank you very much. These are our email addresses and also some of the websites, and this is our references. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lidiane Muradi, and this study is called Collaborative Writing Task Analysis in Institutionally Integrated Teletandem, focus on feedback and results. According to Lewis and O'Dowd 2015, telecollaborative activities can be referred to also as online intercultural exchange, virtual exchanges, virtual connections, globally networked learning, and so on. But all of these terms in the sense of collaboration with partner classes, in the sense of bilingual, bicultural interaction between students, under the guidance of teachers, experts, and so on. So this study particularly focused the institutional integrated teletandem, defined by Aranha and Cavallari 2015 as a series of teletandem sessions that are embedded in regular foreign language lessons, so that such lessons both feed and are fed by teletandem practice. As its main features, we can point out the tutorial sessions, which prepare the students to begin the process. There are integrating tasks, the teletandem and the foreign language syllabus, and also the assessment, which is done by the learner, the partner, and the foreign language teacher. According to Aranha and Cavallari 2016, institutionally integrated teletandem encourages a collaborative writing process once the tasks are conceived as integrated into the foreign language pedagogy. It should be noted, however, that the writing feedback within this process is performed by the students according to their experience and beliefs. Our guiding questions here are: how does feedback occur in the oral teletandem session? And what are the impacts of such feedback on the participants' rewritten text. So the first thing we can observe is the creation of correction codes between partners, beginning on defining how feedback should be understood in the session. This conversation shows us that the teletandem oral session allows participants to further discuss the suggestions made for the writing activity and to express their points of view on what they thought would be the best choices. Like one of the participants here says, I thought that when I say this course, people would know what I'm saying, that I was referring to the arts course. And then his partner says, well, I didn't. So they both are able to talk more about what they thought it was right or wrong in the text. Here we can see that most of the suggestions made by the English-speaking participant in the original text in English were actually incorporated in the final version. However, that expression, discourse, which the Brazilian participant said during the oral session, he thought it was clear when he meant this course that he was referring to the arts course. He actually kept it the way he initially thought of in the final version. Well, the preliminary conclusions here are that the oral teletandem session does offer opportunities for participants to understand the suggestions as well as to question them or to check how can they be applied to other contexts. The final text is deeply changed by the corrections made. However, not all the suggestions are actually incorporated to the revised text. And also, we could observe that not all the corrections made actually contribute to improve the participants' writing skills. But as mentioned before, teletandem participants provide feedback according to their experiences and beliefs and so on. This is it. Thank you very much.
Okay, and let's go to the last presentation from Gabriela.
Good day to all. I am Gabriela Rossato Franco, a doctoral student at WEL in Londrina, Brazil, under the supervision of Dr. Viviane Frutoso. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here taking part in this event, and I will present my ongoing research that investigates self-assessment as an instrument to mediate Portuguese as a foreign language teacher education in a telecollaborative context. I'll start by presenting an introduction of this study. After that, I will present the methodology followed by the theoretical framework that underlined the preliminary analysis. Finally, I'll share some findings, limitations, and ideas for further development. So this research is carried out in a telecollaborative context named teletandem. A great amount of research on teletandem has explored the potential of this context for teacher education. However, there are some issues concerning Portuguese as a foreign language teacher education that led us to this study. The first one refers to difficulties in teaching Portuguese as a foreign language. In second, Frutoso claims that there are some required skills for Portuguese as foreign language teaching. In some studies, authors found that Brazilian partners have difficulties in providing feedback about their mother tongue, about Portuguese, to their partners. And finally, many research in Teletubby has discussed the importance of mediation for language learning and teaching and teacher education. So this study aims at investigating a self-assessment instrument as a source of information for the teacher-mediator intervention. This way, the teacher can guide mediations focusing on teletending affordances that can relate to Portuguese as foreign language teacher education. So the research questions that are guiding this investigation are: what affordances for Portuguese as foreign language teacher education can be identified in and from teletending sessions, and to what extent a self-assessment instrument can optimize teletending mediations in order to educate Portuguese as foreign language teachers. It is an interpretive, qualitative-based research, and the data was collected from a pilot extension course for Portuguese as foreign language teacher education through telecollaboration. This course aimed at providing a source of information to the teacher and the author of this study, me, in order to help me organize and guide the following and official version of the course that is being offered this semester. The participants were undergraduate and undergraduation and graduation students, and they were of languages and literature, and they were supposed to participate in 4 teletending sessions. After each teletending sessions, they had to fill out a self-assessment instrument, and they also had the readings we suggested, and finally, they should participate in 4 mediations. They were face-to-face meetings, and each meeting lasted 1 hour, when we would discuss their teletending experiences and the issues selected by the mediator, me, which concerned to the Portuguese as foreign language teacher education. So I would read the self-assessment instruments. So actually, for me, as a teacher mediator and as a researcher, the self-assessment instrument was actually a teletending tracking sheet. Okay, so I could identify important issues which related to PFL teacher education, focus on these issues in mediations. So teletending was both part of the course activities and methodological procedure for the course itself. The study is carried out based on the concepts of affordances for teacher education identified by El Kadri in teletending, and the concept of assessment understood as both a diagnostic and formative. For this current analysis, I selected one Brazilian participant, and through his answers to the self-assessment sheets and the records of teletending sessions, it is possible to report the following findings. First of all, the student focused on communication and intelligibility. He adopted different strategies for his partner comprehension and different ways of providing feedback. He was also concerned in not reinforcing stereotypes when discussing cultural issues, and he was able to use different technological resources to communicate with his partner. Finally, he also reported some difficulties in providing feedback and performing both roles as both roles of being a PFL teacher and a teletending partner. It was possible to identify some of the affordances which had already been verified by El Kadri, and others, such as to adopt different ways of providing feedback, to use different technological resources, and to talk about cultural issues without reinforcing stereotypes. So students could reflect upon their pedagogical practices, mother tongue, and cultural issues. We also noticed that they applied the knowledge sharing mediations to the following teletuning sessions. And we can conclude that students could take better advantage of their teletuning sessions concerning their education as PFL teachers. And guiding the course and mediations through the assessment approach had a positive impact in our own pedagogical practice and allowed us, my advisor and I, to step in the students' performance while the teletuning sessions were still going on. We also found a few limitations. First of all, there were no records of the mediations. There were no instruments to discover students' perspective about the course, so we do not know their opinions about the course, if it was helpful for them in their pedagogical practices. And finally, 1 hour for the mediations, for each mediation, was not enough. So another version of the extension course is being offered this semester. This is the final version of it to collect the data for my study. And we intend to apply a new instrument to collect the students' perception about the course, and also provide 1.5 hours of mediations for each mediation. So these are my references. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna, for helping us with the presentations. Thank you, presenters, including myself and Anna. Sorry, I am also the mediator this time. And well, we are now open for questions. I have to say that I haven't received any questions so far, but the floor is yours, please.
Okay, maybe I could come in with a few questions and a comment, and maybe that will perhaps trigger further discussions or questions or, you know, more comments from the participants, okay?
Just a second, Douglas. What, Anna? Anna is there like...
No, I just would like to check a technical thing. Would you like me to put the session picture again in the middle, or do you prefer to see everyone? Because I think if I share my screen with the picture, you can see everyone. So just asking you what you would prefer.
I don't think we need the picture with the names of the sessions anymore, the names of the presentations anymore. Thank you, Anna.
Okay.
Sorry, Douglas, to interrupt.
Yes, I'm sorry, but just...
No problem. So first of all, congratulations to my colleagues who have just presented in the session. There were very interesting papers, very interesting ideas. And my first question is to Susie and Ana Carolina Freschi. It was mentioned that you could spot some paralinguistic features in corrective feedback. I think you said features, but I'm sure about the word paralinguistic. What exactly do you mean? I mean, for example, that movement from side to side, head movements, facial expressions, anything to do with intonation, or, you know, what do you mean by paralinguistic features in your data?
Go ahead, Anna. It's too much, you know, for me to be the moderator, the presenter, and everything. Go ahead.
Okay, so you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Paralinguistic features, you mean when I was explaining the examples?
Yes, I think you showed that table. You divided between implicit and explicit feedback.
That was me.
Yeah, that was you.
Anyway.
That was
right?
me, but I don't think I said paralinguistic, because we are our theoretical framework is multimodality. So, I mean, we were really interested in checking the oral mode, visual mode, and written mode, how they interacted. So if I used paralinguistic, I can remember, Douglas, but if I did, what I meant was how these different modes are interrelated during the offering or the provision of feedback.
Oh, I see. So it's actually connected with modality, right?
Multimodality, yes.
Multimodality, yeah. I think if you want to go back, you don't have to go back now, but if you want to go back later, I think it's in the column of explicit features, okay, which was on the right on the screen.
It was written then.
Yes, it was written.
Oh, it was written, but then that was Lister et al. It was not our interpretation. That was a table like from their work. We didn't. It's like a quote from their work.
I see. So you did not necessarily have those features in your data. Okay, right. My other question, I have two questions for Gabriela. The first question is about your the teleattendance sessions. You mentioned 4 teleattendance sessions in your preliminary version of the course. I'd like to hear more about those sessions. I mean, what were they about? What did the interactions do or were expected to do in those sessions, considering that it's teacher education, necessarily for Portuguese as a foreign language? So what did they do in those sessions?
Yeah, first of all, hello, thank you for your question. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
So first of all, the number of sessions, teleattending sessions was defined by University of Arkansas. Okay, so they decided, the professor there decided about the 4 interactions. And as we had this partnership with them, we decided to offer this course to work with mediations of teleattending in order to optimize this context for PFL teacher education. So considering all the positive impact of teleattending for teacher education, we've decided to offer the course with teleattending interactions as part of it. So teleattending interactions were part of the course. The students were supposed to take part of 4 interactions. This was like the practical part of the course, the moment that they could have the opportunity to act like Portuguese as a foreign language teachers, and the readings, the mediations, which were in fact extended. So mediations, each mediation usually lasts for like 20 minutes, but we extended it for 1 hour in the past course, in the pilot course, and now in this semester it's lasting 1 hour and a half. And also the self-assessment instruments that they were supposed to fill out after each teleattending interaction.
But actually, what did they talk about in those sessions? Did they talk about the language? Did they talk about teaching? What was the content of those sessions?
Do you mean the mediation sessions or
No,
the interactions?
The interactions.
In teleattending, they are free. They are following the autonomy principle of teleattending, so they can decide what they are gonna talk about. They just have to bear in mind that the Brazilian students have to bear in mind that they are taking a course for their education as PFL teachers. So everything they are doing in teleattending sessions is being considered for the course itself, for the content of the course itself. So I would read all the self-assessment instruments, and based on their answers, I would prepare and organize the content of the course. So they were free to decide what they wanted to talk about, but the mediations were focused on their education as PFL teachers.
Okay. And you said it again, and you mentioned the self-assessment instruments, which I don't think you showed in your presentation. I think you mentioned them, but you didn't show exactly what they constitute of. What kind of instruments are they?
they were like a Teletending tracking sheet for me and for Viviane as professor, as mediators and teachers of the course. And they contained questions such as, in this session, I was able to provide explanations and feedback for my partner. I was able to discuss cultural issues without reinforcing stereotypes. So it was related, it was a self-assessment instrument related to their performance as teachers and not as learners.
Okay, right. Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you, Gabrielle, and thank you, Susie and Ana Carolina. I would maybe like to comment on some connections between what you all did and what I try to do, or what I'm trying to do actually. And my presentation is actually based on a paper, on a full paper that was published this year in the Iranian Distance Education Journal. That's one of the 3 references that I mentioned at the end of my talk, of my presentation.
Douglas, I think we do have a question from everybody. I mean, it's great. I think we are all really interested in learning more about each of the papers, but maybe we should give some time for others to also ask questions. I'm sorry to interrupt you again.
I'll never forgive you. I'll never forgive you.
You never.
Okay. If we have some time at the end, you give me the floor again. Okay.
No, it's just because there might be, for example.
I'm joking. I mean, life has been too serious.
Why, Douglas? Sorry.
Just go ahead. I'm glad perhaps that the fact that I started has motivated someone else to come up with a question. Let's go with other questions. And if we have some time, that might be the case at the end, because our session is not, I mean, it hasn't fulfilled all the time we have. So maybe I can come back at the end. No worries. Just go ahead.
Okay, I'm really sorry. You know, it's just because there, I can see here that there are people that started, you know, prompting, and right. I got a bit worried. But okay. Don't forget, you know, we are certainly going to have some time.
Okay.
Okay, Solange, she's asking, I don't know, is it to everyone? Yes, I think you can see it, Douglas.
Yes, I put it to everyone because I'd like to know a bit about the data, where the data comes from, and a bit about the methodological procedures that you followed.
Solange, I could just see the beginning of your question. Could you maybe say it?
Okay, could you develop a bit on the methodological framework and tell us a bit about the data?
Would you like me to start?
Could you?
Sure, yes. Okay, so the methodology I used was interpretive, based on characteristics of corrective actions, let's say, whatever had to do with either making sure the other interactant would learn something that he or she did not know in the language, or necessarily correct something which was produced wrongly, not according to the standards of the English language. And the cases I could find were connected with vocabulary. So sometimes the interactant, the Brazilian interactant, did not know a few words in English to express what he or she wanted to express. So maybe he used a wrong word, and the North American interactant provided the correct word. And sometimes it had to do with grammar. So basically, I noticed that the framework encompasses corrective feedback as well in the study. And I try to compare the data, or the information from the data, with theoretical basis for language assessment that we have, what is connected with computers so far, and general aspects of language assessment. So that was the methodology that I followed. And in the end, I reflected upon the data and came up with the conclusion that there is no evidence for a new paradigm in language assessment by means of computer-mediated assessment. It just makes it faster, more interesting. We've got modality, we've got different technological resources to count on. However, it does not differ very much from the principles which we follow in face-to-face classes. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, but how did you find that? I mean, did you watch all the sessions? Did you transcribe all the sessions?
No,
and then how did you,
I decided to base my study on Rossi dos Santos study, because Rossi dos Santos studied various characteristics of feedback, okay, recasts and other things. That was his master's dissertation. And I said, okay, I think this piece of work has got interesting data for me to work on and to start reflecting about assessment in teleattendance. So all the interactions had been transcribed, so I just picked them up from his dissertation.
You worked with the transcriptions. That was not clear for me.
Oh yeah, with the transcripts.
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Susie, your microphone is mute. Oh,
yes,
okay.
Sorry. Maybe we could organize the questions in the order of the presentations. I think it worked in other sessions. I would have another question for you, Douglas.
Okay.
You mentioned some principles for computer-assisted language assessment. Are there any, or you are trying to propose them?
The principles?
Yeah, the principles.
Oh, they are theoretical principles. They came from the theory. I mean, I just mentioned the two most important ones. One is the fact that assessment is part of the learning and teaching process, and in the part of the learning process in teleattendance. So it's there, like other characteristics of learning. And the fact that computer-assisted assessment or computer-assisted learning can definitely bring advantages to teaching and learning processes, like speed, how many people you reach, how you store data. You can connect that with multimodality in the case of your study, for example. So there are a number of advantages in dealing with computers, with technology and computers in online teaching and learning, especially now. I mean, I didn't want to make my presentation too long, but at the moment we are all experiencing online lessons, right? So online education is, you know, the buzzword at the moment. So perhaps we can reflect a bit more about the characteristics of online assessment in connection with online teaching and learning as well. I mean, how is it done, or how is it being done? Can we come up with any novelty, any theory? My point is, can we come up with any theoretical novelty that can contribute for the area of language assessment and testing? So far, it doesn't seem we have a new paradigm, like I said. We've got advantages, but not necessarily a new paradigm. Okay.
Okay. Okay, Douglas, thank you. Solange says she has to leave. See you later, Solange.
See ya.
Okay. I don't know if we have any other questions for the first presentation. Jessica has a question for Lydie, who's the third. Are there any questions for Carol and I? We are the second. So we can ask Lidiane. Look, I'm working, this is from Jessica, Lydie. I'm working with the teletandem written task in my research. I've been having trouble explaining how it works and what its main purposes are to people who are not familiar with the Teletandem project? Could you provide some ideas on that?
Jessica, could you tell me a little more? Could you explain your question a little better to me? Because what I thought here is that the writing tasks are we talking about institutionally integrated Teletandem? I do think it's specific in, according to the foreign language lesson, it's connected to, it's linked to. So could you maybe tell me a little bit more, what would you like to know so that I can tell you about? I'm not sure if I understood your question.
Okay. Hello, Lidiane. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Well, I am in the beginning of my research. I've just started developing it. And basically, what it seems to be right now is an attempt to describe how this written task works, in the sense of how it is written and then reviewed and then rewritten, and to what purposes this is done. And I just presented at Celine, and I was under the impression that people who are not familiar with the Teletandem context, they are a bit intrigued, maybe, like what is the purpose of these corrections if the partner is not a teacher, or what is the purpose of this task if Teletandem is oral interaction. And I'm having trouble explaining this clearly, and maybe you could help me a little with that.
Yes. Thank you, Jessica, for explaining to me a little bit more of what you were willing to know with your question. And what I think is, perhaps you could start by differentiating the Teletandem practice from institutionally integrated Teletandem practice, because there are many papers which could help you on that, because there are many papers about writing task in the Teletandem, and also feedback, offering, receiving, Su Cavallari and Freschi and many other papers could help you with that. And when you talk about institutionally integrated Teletandem, what I think you should focus on is that the guiding principles, Teletandem principles, are kept, but the reciprocity, autonomy, and the bilingualism. But in terms of autonomy here, we should, it's the same principle, but just understood in a different way. And as defined by Cavallari and Aranha, 2014, 2015, 16, institutionally integrated Teletandem keep the guiding principles, as I said before, understood in a little bit different way, and because it's connected to the foreign language course, there are some tasks to be worked on by the participants. They are free to do it according to their beliefs and experiences, as I said, but there are some tests for them to accomplish, and one of them is the writing tasks. The topics are related to the foreign language course, which is the idea. And as you mentioned it, there is the original task, which is written and sent to the partner. The partner makes some suggestions, and they further discuss it in the oral test, the oral session, I'm sorry. And then the participant prepares the final version, let's say. So I am sorry if perhaps I haven't been able to answer it clear, but what I'm saying here is that when you talk about it, perhaps you should make it very, how can I say? It's a specific context within the teletending practice, because there are other forms of conducting it. I don't know, Jessica, did I answer your question?
You're helping for sure. And I appreciate that very much. It's a hard question that was asked to me and I couldn't answer it well. That's why I'm asking it to you as well, because I know you have worked with the task as well. But these are kind of hard questions, I think, for people who do not know the teletending context. Even when we explain how it's organized and how institutional integrated teletandem works, there are still, I think, some questions to be answered. But your thoughts helped me a lot. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Sure, Leila, please.
If you want a reason for the people that think it should be only oral, you know, they have to understand that language, the oral language and the written language, they are interdependent. How can you be able to speak a language and then you go to that country that speaks that language and then you cannot read the menu, you cannot read an instruction, you cannot read the paper. So we are surrounded by written language. The teletending, the focus is on oral language, but written language is all around us. So even if you write a diary or a narrative about what happened, you know, in your session, just like to report and tell what happened, we talked about this and that, and then she told me that. So we don't, you know, even here, we are here speaking, you know, with all this technology, but we are reading the chat. We have to see all the things. We are surrounded by written language. So both written and oral language, you know.
Yeah, in fact, there was some argument. There was some argument against the use of the written task. But I think that what is intriguing sometimes, Leila, and this is a specific person who asked Jessica, you know, questions about the task, was worried about how the feedback as a way of assessment, because assessment is always linked to an objective, right? So what are you learning, so that I can assess, you know, your learning.
I see.
So how can a partner who's not a teacher or a teacher to be or connect to teaching, to language teaching, how well or why would we want him to offer feedback? This was one of the questions, you know, and so I believe, and there is literature, you know, to say that, well, they cannot do certain things, they cannot explain certain things, but there are other aspects, you know, of language learning that teletending partners can do, can help, you know, their partners.
You mean that they cannot explain grammatical things?
Yeah, for example, yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes, you know, we know our language. You think you know, all of a sudden someone asks you, you know, what does the meaning of embora? Eu fui embora. And then she says, I don't know. It takes a while to, you know, so because it's kind of naturalized, you know, it's so natural. It's so sometimes you have to, you know, answer the question next time, you know.
And in this task specifically, there is something, there are some tricky features in this task. For example, they exchange tasks, right? and the feedback is given to the written, in the written modality of the language, but they can use this as a topic for the oral interaction.
Exactly.
So during the conversation, the written feedback may be the topic of a conversation, and during this conversation, there may be oral feedback.
Okay.
So you see, what feedback are you talking about? Feedback to what, you know? So there are some elements that are quite hard to explain and to break into analysis, categories for analysis. So I understand why Jessica is worried. But you are right, I agree with you. There is no reason why, and that's why we use this written text in Teletandem, right? Okay, I think I'm...
I would like to thank everyone for helping, and I agree with Professor Leila as well. And I think it looks kind of obvious, but when you try to explain it scientifically, it gets a little more complicated. You know, I think I'm looking for more theory to back that up. And well, I thank you very much for all your comments.
Okay. Any other questions to Lydie, or we may go to Gabriela? Gabriela's presentation. I do have one for Gabriela. I don't want to hold the floor, but if, as you were explaining, I had the same question Douglas asked about the self-assessment instrument. So I understand that it's the self-assessment is focused on learning how to become a teacher, a foreign language, Portuguese as a foreign language teacher, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a self-assessment instrument to assess language learning, foreign language learning.
No.
Okay. I think there are some, it's crazy when people say that, and I am doing the same thing, Gabriela, I'm sorry. But I think it would be, it would be easier to understand if you said, you know, within the teacher education paradigm, there are quite a few researchers who discuss reflective language teaching education programs. So within this paradigm, it would be, I think it would be clear to understand what the instrument is focused on.
Mm-hmm.
Because self-assessment, you know, we tend to link self-assessment to learning. So they self-assess their learning. They're learning of what?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I understand now, I think it makes sense, but it took me a while to understand because this is a term linked to learning theories, assessment theories of learning. And okay, you are learning how to become a teacher, all right. But it took me a while to establish all these connections. And within teacher education, there is the reflective you know, I can't remember, I'm sorry, because I'm not in teacher education, but it's a reflective teaching paradigm by, you know, within Dewey and Zeichner and Liston. They all talk about reflective teaching and reflective on practice, within practice, and etc.
All right.
That would be so strikingly clear, you know. Don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, in fact, to be honest, I haven't thought about that.
Just a minute, Gabriela. Thank you, Martha. Reflective practice.
Thank you, Martha. I've been working with assessment now during my doctorate, so it's something new for me, and I haven't thought about that. And in fact, this instrument was developed by me, based on an instrument that was previously developed by Viviane, where the participants assessed the development of their partners concerning learning Portuguese. So I tried to kind of manage this instrument to our students as teachers. So I get what you're saying, and I'll think about that and surely discuss it with Viviane. Thank you for pointing that.
Okay, it's just, food for thought, really.
Definitely. Thank you.
And I just want to say that Gabi and I were talking in the chat rightly about assessment, because we were talking about the theories related to assessment for Teletandem, which are totally new. Here we are trying to create something from feedback, and now she's creating something for self-assessment, for the tasks, as Lidiane and as Jessica are doing. So yeah, we have to adapt what people have thought so far, and it's really hard. And during Celine debate, like Jessica and I were together, and we had the same comments were made for us, that it's hard to explain what you're doing, because people come from their, not boxes, but from their area, and it's hard for them to sometimes adapt what they think to our context. So yeah, it's been hard. So I talked to Gabriela, and we were here in the chat exchanging some texts, and I'm sure, Gabi, everything will be okay.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah, I think the point is that in general, assessment is related to, like, you have a pedagogical objective, so you teach and then you assess, so assessment related to achievement, right? So this is what people usually have in mind. And since Teletandem is there's nothing previously taught, so what exactly are you assessing? So I think this is probably one of the reasons why we are being asked these questions. But honestly, I don't think it's the only reason. I think it's really a matter of explaining the details of the context, and mainly in relation to this collaborative writing task, there are lots of details, and that makes things, more complicated. We are right on time for the final conference. Jessica saying something. Yes, and the learner can have their own goals. So assessment can be very particular, considering the partner may be aware of what we want to be corrected on. So each participant might or will have their own goals, right? That's
yeah,
true.
I'm sorry I interrupted you. It's that you were saying it's related to an achievement, and sometimes this achievement can be different for each learner.
It is, for sure. And Marta's also saying something. As Teletandem is based on autonomy, probably what we should foster is self-assessment, definitely. But we cannot, I agree with you, Marta. And, but the point is that the partner offers feedback. So what is this feedback they offer? How can it be characterized, right? Carol, Ana Carolina Freschi and I have been investing on this multimodality framework, trying to explain the specificities of feedback in Teletandem, because it does happen. And then what is it like? Well, people, it was great to meet you in this session. I'm sorry, but we will have to interrupt because we are in fact 1 minute late. This is coffee break. Go get your coffee, and I'll see. We are gonna meet you again at the final lecture, okay? Thank you very much, guys.
It was nice to see you and listen to your contribution.